Welcome back. Tonight's story is about a woman who sat across from her husband at 3 years of mediation, smiled through every lie, and then walked into final mediation with a folder pulled from a Delaware courthouse the morning before. Pour the coffee, stay close. My husband hid $340,000 from me during our divorce. The morning before final mediation, I pulled the filings that ended him. My name is Eleanor Hadley Briggs. I am 48 years old. I live in Greenville, South Carolina, in a brick house off Augusta Road with a porch light I leave on every night. I am a forensic accountant. I have been one for 22 years. I find money other people work very hard to hide. The envelope came on a Tuesday in early March. Plain white. My attorney's return address in the corner. Inside, a single sheet listing my husband's financial disclosures for our final mediation. 3 pages, clean, reasonable. The kind of clean that makes the back of my neck go cold. I stood at my kitchen counter at 6 in the evening. The coffee in my cup had gone lukewarm. Outside, the magnolia by the driveway was just starting to bud. I read the page twice. Then I read it a third time. The number at the bottom was wrong by about $300,000. I knew that the way other women know their own children's voices in a crowded room. I sat down at the table. The clock above the stove read 6:14 p.m. I did not cry. I did not call anyone. I opened my laptop instead. There is a sentence I had been saying to myself for 2 years, in the car, in the shower, in the parking lot of the grocery store. It went like this. He thinks I am not paying attention. He thinks I never was. Tell me in the comments where you are watching from tonight. I want to know who is with me on this one. I grew up in a small mill town outside Spartanburg. My father was an electrician. My mother folded laundry at the hospital and saved coupons in a green tin. We were respectable in the way Southern families are respectable. Sunday dinner at 1, sweet tea in a glass pitcher, Bibles on the bookshelf, and bad behavior in the basement. I met Roger Briggs my second year at Clemson. He was studying business. He had a wide, easy smile and a fraternity ring he twisted around his finger when he lied. I did not know that was what he was doing yet. I thought it was a habit, a nervous tic, something endearing. He came from money, not big money, comfortable money. A father who owned 3 car dealerships in the upstate and a mother who ran the junior league. They liked me at first because I was quiet and polite and pretty in a way that did not threaten anyone. They liked me less when I made law review honors and started talking about graduate school. We got married the summer I turned 25. I wore my mother's dress. He wore a smile that did not reach his eyes in any of the photographs. I should have known then. I have looked at those pictures 100 times since, and the truth was already there, sitting in the corner of his mouth. I went to graduate school for accounting. I specialized in fraud. He went into commercial real estate. He used to joke at parties that he sold buildings, and I caught people who hid them. People laughed every time. I smiled like a wife smiles. For 23 years, I built a career. I traced money through 12 states and 3 countries. I sat on the witness stand in federal courtrooms in Charleston, in Atlanta, in Richmond. I knew the shape of a shell company the way other women know the shape of their own hands. I knew the way a man hides money before he leaves a marriage. I had taught classes on it. I did not see what he was doing to me. Not at first, not for years. He started small, a storage unit I did not know about, a credit card statement that came to his office instead of the house. A second phone he said was for work, charging on the kitchen counter at 2 in the morning. Each thing alone was nothing. A woman with my training should have seen the pattern. A wife in love with the wrong man almost never does. There were warning signs I told myself were normal. The way he made me ask for the joint account password every 6 months because he changed it. The way he laughed when I mentioned the long hours and said, "You do not have to worry about money, honey. That is my job." The way his mother once said at Easter dinner in front of my parents that women who make their own money tend to forget how to be wives. He nodded and cut his ham. I should have known then. I should have known many things. The first real crack came on a Thursday in October 2 years ago. I was working late in my home office. He had left his laptop open on the kitchen island. I walked past it to get a glass of water. The screen was on. An email was open. The sender was a name I did not recognize. The signature line said Delaware Registered Agent Services. I stopped. I read the first line. I closed the laptop. I drank my water. I went back upstairs. I did not say a word. About a month later, on a Sunday morning, he sat down at the breakfast table with a strange, casual cheerfulness and said he had been thinking. He thought maybe we needed some space. He thought maybe a trial separation would be good for us. He said it the way you say you might try a new restaurant. He said we should be civil. He said we should keep it out of court. He said he wanted what was fair. I poured him a second cup of coffee. I told him I would think about it. I smiled. That afternoon, while he was at the driving range, I opened my own laptop and started a folder. I named it Taxes. I have been a forensic accountant for a very long time. I know exactly what to name a folder if you do not want a man to look inside it. The mediation began 3 months later. He came in with his lawyer, a slick man named Brent Halloran out of Columbia, the kind of lawyer who smiles at women like they are small. Roger sat next to him in a navy suit. He had lost weight. He had a new watch. He spoke to me the way you speak to a hostess at a restaurant you do not plan to return to. He brought disclosures, 3 pages of them, clean, reasonable, the same kind of clean that 2 years later would arrive in my kitchen on a Tuesday in March and make the back of my neck go cold. That first round, I sat in the leather chair across from him and listened to my own husband of 23 years lie to my face about $750,000. I did not raise my voice. I did not cry. I asked careful questions. He answered them. His lawyer smiled. My lawyer wrote things down. That night, I went home, took off my heels at the front door, and stood barefoot on the cold tile in the foyer for a long time. The grandfather clock in the hall struck 10. I could smell the rosemary plant my mother had given me last Christmas, dying slowly on the kitchen windowsill. I told myself one quiet sentence. He picked the wrong wife to underestimate. That was the moment the folder began. If you have ever sat across a table from someone you loved and watched them lie about you, drop a 1 in the comments. I want to know I am not alone in this. For 2 years, I was patient. I did not confront him. I did not threaten him. I did not let him see one flicker of what I knew. I went to mediation. I cooked dinner on the nights he came home. I let him keep his second phone on the kitchen counter. I let him think I was tired and sad and beaten down. I was building. I pulled bank statements going back 9 years, not just the joint accounts, the ones in his name only, the ones I had access to as his spouse but had never looked at because trust does that to a woman. It makes her blind in the places she should be sharpest. I traced transfers. I matched them to dates. I found a pattern of withdrawals that started exactly 2 years before he asked for the trial separation. Round numbers. Always under $10,000. Always within 48 hours of a closing on one of his commercial deals. I pulled property records in 3 counties. I pulled UCC filings. I built a spreadsheet that lived on a thumb drive I kept inside a tampon box in the back of the linen closet. He never opened that box. No man like Roger ever does. Then, on a slow Wednesday in February, I was reviewing a case file for a client of mine, a hospital system that had been defrauded by a contractor in 2022. I was cross-checking a registered agent address in Wilmington, Delaware. The address looked familiar. I stared at it for a full minute before I understood why. It was the same address that had been at the bottom of that email on my husband's laptop 2.5 years earlier. I sat very still at my desk. I closed the file. I poured myself a glass of water and stood at my office window and watched a cardinal land on the dogwood branch outside. I let myself feel exactly nothing for 2 full minutes. Then I went back to my desk and opened the Delaware Division of Corporations website. I searched the address. 3 LLCs were registered to it. 2 were unrelated. The third was a single-member entity formed 8 months before our trial separation. The listed manager was a name I did not know. The registered agent was Halloran Brent Avery III. I knew that name. I had seen it on a Clemson fraternity directory in a box in our attic, a directory my husband kept because it had his pledge photo in it. Halloran Brent Avery III had been his big brother in Sigma Pi in 1997, the lawyer at our mediation, his same first and middle names rearranged, his same family, his same fraternity. I took a screenshot, I printed it, I labeled it with a date and a case number out of habit. Then I sat back in my chair and laughed the dry, quiet laugh of a woman who has just realized that the worst thing she ever suspected was true and was also, by every coincidence of her own profession, the easiest thing in the world for her to prove. That night, I called my attorney. I did not tell her everything. I asked her one question. I asked her if I could supplement disclosures at any point before final mediation, including the morning of. She said yes. She said any new material evidence had to be shared no later than the start of session. I told her I would see her at 7 in the morning, the day before final mediation. The final mediation was scheduled for a Friday at 9. On Thursday morning at 4:30, I got out of bed in the dark. I made coffee. I drove downtown to my office on East North Street and pulled the full Delaware filings, formation documents, the annual reports, the registered agent statements, the bank routing information I had subpoenaed quietly through a friend on the civil side 3 weeks earlier. I cross-referenced every wire transfer from his name-only accounts to the LLC. The total was $340,280, deposited across 19 transfers over 26 months. I printed it all. I bound it in a navy blue folder with a clean white label that read, Briggs Supplemental Disclosure, Exhibits A through M. I drove to my attorney's office on Pettigrew Street and handed her the folder at 7 in the morning. She opened it. She read the first 3 pages. She looked up at me. She said one word. She said, Eleanor. I said, I know. The Friday session was at 9. I wore a gray dress my mother had bought me for my 40th birthday. I wore the small pearl earrings my grandmother gave me when I graduated from Clemson. I drank 1 cup of coffee. I drove myself. Roger was already there when I walked in. So was Brent Halloran. So was Halloran's cousin, who had been quietly representing the LLC as a third party for 2 years, a man named Carter Avery, who I had not met before but recognized from his LinkedIn photo. They were laughing about a golf course in Hilton Head when I sat down. If you have stayed with me until now, thank you. Tell me in the comments what part of this story has settled deepest in you so far. The mediator opened the session. My attorney slid the navy folder across the table. The laughing stopped. I watched my husband's face for a full minute. He did not look at the folder. He looked at me. There was a flicker behind his eyes that I had only ever seen once before, 23 years ago, when his mother told my parents in our kitchen that women who make their own money forget how to be wives. He had nodded then. He had cut his ham. He was not nodding now. I spoke quietly. I did not raise my voice. I have sat on a witness stand too many times to ever need volume. I said, Roger. The address in Wilmington is the same one I pulled on a hospital fraud case 4 years ago. The registered agent is your fraternity big brother. The LLC was formed 8 months before you asked me for space. The transfers total $340,280. The bank routing matches the account you opened at the credit union in Malden in July of the year before you moved out. Exhibits A through M. He said nothing. I said, You told me once that I sold buildings and you caught people who hid them. You laughed at that joke for 20 years. You should have remembered which one of us was which. That was my callback. That was the line I had been saving. His face went the color of paper. His lawyer started to speak. The mediator held up a hand. My attorney slid a second folder across the table with the South Carolina bar complaint already drafted against Halloran for conflict of interest, registered agent for an undisclosed marital asset, dated and signed. The room was very quiet. Outside the window, a Greenville city bus went by. I could hear it through the glass. I stood up. I picked up my purse. I walked out. Final settlement closed 11 days later. I received the full $340,000, plus my half of the marital estate, plus attorney's fees, plus a clause his lawyer fought and lost over a finding of fraudulent concealment that will follow Roger Briggs through every future financial disclosure he ever signs in the state of South Carolina. If this story has reached somewhere quiet in you, hit the like button gently. No big speech, just a small thank you between us. I drove home that afternoon down Augusta Road with the windows cracked. The dogwoods were just starting to bloom. I passed the park where Roger and I used to walk on Sunday mornings the first year we were married, back when I still believed his nervous tick was endearing. I talked to a younger version of myself the whole way home. I told her she was right to keep going to graduate school. I told her she was right to specialize in fraud, even when his mother said women who make their own money forget how to be wives. I told her that the careful, quiet attention she paid to numbers her whole life was not a flaw in her femininity. It was the thing that was going to save her. I told that 25-year-old girl in her mother's wedding dress one more thing. I told her that being underestimated by a man who twisted his fraternity ring when he lied was not the same as being unloved. It was just information. And one day, 23 years later, she would know what to do with it. I pulled into my driveway. The porch light was on. I had left it on that morning the way I leave it on every morning. I sat in the car for a minute with my hands on the steering wheel. The folder was on the passenger seat. I picked it up, walked inside, and put it in the bottom drawer of my office filing cabinet behind the tax returns, where it will live for the rest of my working life. He thought I was not paying attention. He thought I never was. I was paying attention the entire time.